Hey YouTube, Coppersan here. Lost Ark Early Access is starting tomorrow and I still have no idea which class I'm going to main. To help myself and everyone else who's struggling with this question, I did a ton of research into all 15 classes that will be available when the game launches to figure out which class would be the best for myself and which class would fare the best in PvE content in general, and I hope this tier list will help you decide as well. I'll be basing this list on a few criteria: how easy the class is to play for everyone who doesn't have diamond hands like myself, what a class brings to the party in higher level rates, like what are their damage buffs, do they debuff enemies, stuff like that, and their overall damage and kit, like do they rely a lot on attacking monsters from the back, are they a burst class, do they suck, stuff like that. This list is purely meant for PvE. As for PvP, classes can perform a lot differently, so we're just gonna completely ignore that part of the game. Also, do keep in mind that any class can outperform the other if it's simply just played by a more skilled player. All classes can be viable, so play what you like. But anyway, let's get down to business. We're gonna work our way through from the mages to the warriors, then the assassins, then the martial artists, and lastly the gunners. Starting off with the Sorceress. Classes in Lost Ark can have different builds based on their skill points and engravings that can be put on accessories. These engravings can have massive effects on the class playstyle. For example, the Sorceress can use the Ignition engraving that increases her critical chance and gives her an insane boost in critical damage, making this class an insane burst class. But there's also an engraving called Flux, which lowers the skill cooldowns and increases her damage, so you can spam her skills like crazy. These two builds mean the Sorceress can be very flexible. Do you want to have a low skill ceiling spam build? Go Flux. Do you want a more difficult playstyle where you either hit your burst for massive damage or feel kinda useless because everything you just threw at the enemy misses? That is possible as well with the Ignition engraving. This class also has decent mobility. It's not very tanky, but she can get out of harm's way. Her skills do require a bit of casting time, so you're standing there standing still casting your spells. It does require a bit of practice, but the flexibility and damage potential of this class is really good. She can also debuff enemies, causing them to take more damage from all other sources, which is not super amazing, but a useful party buff, giving her, in my opinion, a solid place on the S tier. The other mage class is the Bard. This class goes into a special tier because this is a true supportive class with helpful buffs, shields and heals for the party member. This class is always in high demand at higher level parties because you're just that useful. Building damage on this class is not really recommended as they will never be on the same level as the other DPS classes. This also means that you would struggle a little bit more than other classes when it comes to getting to level 50, but after that you'll be everyone's favorite go-to party member, so hey, there's that. Next up are the warriors. There's only two mages. Starting with the Berserker, this class is big, beefy and has an awesome identity skill that makes his attacks harder, better, faster and stronger. Identity skills are special class skills that can be activated by usually filling up a resource bar by attacking enemies. All classes have one. This class is very simple to play and can dish out massive damage and has some big AoE attacks. His skills do have high cooldowns, which can be a bit annoying as you'll be regular attacking between your cooldowns more often than other classes. Plus, if a boss is kinda fast, your skills could miss, but thankfully this class doesn't only bring damage to the table, they can also debuff enemies with their red dust debuff that makes targets take 12% more damage from all sources for a short while. It doesn't have the highest uptime though. But still, because of their tankiness, easiness to play and great damage, I will place this class in the S tier as well. The Gunlancer is another warrior class and is a very interesting one in my opinion. After making this video, I think I might just be maining this class, and that's not the reason why I'm putting this class in the highest tier, by the way. The Gunlancer sacrifices speed and mobility for being an indestructible master of war. This class is the tankiest class in the game. It can straight up ignore boss mechanics and tank attacks like an actual boss. And not only that, they can also buff up party members, disrupt boss patterns with a taunt and place debuffs that reduce defense. His buffs aren't as good as the actual supportive classes, but it does get pretty close to be honest. Combined with being the most tanky class and also being on the same level as the other classes damage-wise, makes this class an easy S+ tier in my opinion. There is one sort of limitation in his playstyle though, and that's that most of the Gunlancer skills deal additional damage when facing the front of the monster, but to be honest this is usually where you want to be anyway, but I do think it's worth mentioning. And then there's Paladin, who's also next to the Bard a supportive class. Paladins can use both short-range sword attacks and long-range magical attacks. Similar to the Bard, they focus on buffing and healing party members, but are slightly more combat focused, but still a lot weak compared to other classes, so hup, in the support here he goes. And so we have arrived at the assassin classes. Surprisingly, both assassin classes are relatively tanky compared to the others, standing somewhere in the middle of the pack when it comes to survivability. I played a ton of Shadowhunter myself during the CBT, and this is a quickly attacking both short and long range class that can use their mobility to quickly move in and out of combat. They heal when they transform with their identity skill and have great damage and great AoE attacks as well. They even are immune to staggering, meaning that their attacks cannot be interrupted when they are being attacked when they are transformed. They can also apply a debuff to make enemies take more damage for a short while, but they aren't amazing when it comes to big damage without a transformation compared to other classes. Therefore, I am putting them on the A tier. The Deathblade class is a bit more focused on close combat, but has a ton more mobility to get out of harm's way, and like I mentioned earlier, is still relatively tanky. They can bring some nice damage to party play, but most of their skills do deal additional damage when you attack the backside of the enemy, meaning that positioning yourself is pretty important with this class as well. They do bring buffs to party play, boosting the damage of head and back attacks by a ton and regular attacks slightly, but this buff is kinda situational as not every party member has back or head attacks, but still bringing good damage, medium tankiness and easy and quick gameplay. I would put this class in A tier as well. The martial artists are a cool bunch as well, being relatively tanky and most of them are hard hitting. The Wardancer is in my opinion another S tier class. It has very useful party buffs increasing crit chance and attack speed, and this class has great mobility and good damage as well. When applying their buffs correctly, they can help the party members deal massive damage. They do lack a bit of super armor, meaning that they can't get interrupted during their skills, but still are a great all-round class that isn't that hard to get into. The Scrapper class is the most tanky out of the martial artist classes. This class has different builds that can either go for high burst damage or high mobility. However, their damage ceiling isn't all that high, and quite a few of your skills deal more damage when attacking the backside of the enemy. That means you'll have to keep your position in mind as well, putting it in my opinion in the A tier. The Striker is in my opinion still A tier, but definitely a little bit lower, suffering from mostly relying on back attacks and positioning, but his class is also a bit slower than his female counterpart to Wardancer, so that doesn't really work that well. It does have really good party buffs though, also similar to the Wardancer. This class mainly focuses on burst damage instead, and a good Striker can easily dish out a lot of damage compared to the other party members, so relatively good party buffs, great burst damage, but it is kinda difficult to play this one with a bit higher skill ceiling, having to keep your position in mind, but still because of the high damage I would place this class in the lower end of the A tier. And the final martial artist class is the Soul Fist, having one of the coolest looking skills, which is also one of the hardest to hit. This skill is a big part of your burst and it can deal crazy insane damage, that's how crazy it is. But hitting it is very tough though, due to how slow the skill is. The Soul Fist is also very easily interrupted, and her identity skill has 3 stages that need to be charged, and she's really awesome when those are active, but she does fall off when her identity skill is not active. She's very versatile though and has some defensive and offensive buffs. There's a lot of potential for this class, but she needs to be played by the right player. I don't think it's that easy to play her right, earning her a spot on the B tier for me. And the final class branch are the Gunners, starting with the Gunslinger. Okay, so I'm taking easiness of play into account, and that almost made this class fall out of S tier. But hear me out, this class can swap between 3 different guns for long, mid and short range attacks and has probably the highest skill ceiling in the game, but this also makes the Gunslinger extremely flexible with different builds that can be tried out. She is rather squishy, but does have high mobility and doesn't need to rely on attacking from the front or the back, meaning you can let other players tank for you while you dish out the damage from afar, only to swap out your guns if a boss does get closer. Again, the skill ceiling for this class is very high, but with very high damage, useful party buffs and increased crit rate, this class is still an S tier in my opinion. The male counterpart of the Gunslinger is the Deatheye, and that on the other hand is a completely different story. Stuck with the same high skill ceiling and 3 different weapons to swap between, this class focuses more on back attacks and medium to close range attacks. Being very squishy does not help a lot either for this class, even though they do have some mobility. You have to be really close to the enemies, putting yourself more in harm's way. It's not like they're dead weight or anything like that. In party play they can for example still provide the same buffs as the Gunslinger, but I still would place this class on B tier because it is very difficult to play and a lot more punishing than the Gunslinger. The Artillerist is the heavy of the gunner classes, providing big AoE attacks with a timed delay. This class is not for everyone and sometimes require either advanced haki to see into the future or know the game extremely well to position your attacks properly. But besides this more thought out, slower playstyle, the Artillerist deals very high damage with their attacks when their attacks do land and have strong shields that can tank through most attacks. They're pretty easy to play once you understand how to land your attacks properly, but they're definitely not for everyone. They can also place turrets that reduce enemy defense and increase the damage the enemies take for a short window, which is great for when your party wants to burst a boss. Overall, thanks to the tankiness and high damage, this class is still A tier for me. And the final class of this video is the Sharpshooter. This class doesn't have a lot of HP, but good mobility and is a fully ranged class, so you don't need to be close to monsters anyway. Who's gonna hit you if you're hitting them from like across the screen? You will need to hit your attacks as well though, but overall this class is very easy to play. Pretty strong and overall just very beginner friendly. Can also bring a damage buff to the party, but it's mostly because it's so easy to play that I placed it in the A tier. And those are all classes that will be available with the release of Lost Ark. What are you planning on maining? Let me know in the comments. And that was all for today. As always, many thanks to our members for making this video possible. Thanks to Niels de Coninck, Raar maar waar, Sebastian, Hanoy, FLX, Ryalias, Terry Kim, Vareese, Mora, Wiley, Historycanon, Backspace, OTI, Saffronix, Lonzo, BG Extremes, Anwar NHI, Frank Bouget, Ziggy Deer, Flidiot, Beamer WT, Knifesu, Chen125, Cloudfix, Gusus Rodriguez, Froggy, Gleason, Brandon Cam, Vira, Trevor, Michael Machaka, Ratius, Justin Ville, Silvio Nato, Stevie Zhang, Afterlord_MS, Heopan, C-Max, Striker Elk, Martin Panzik, Niu, Taiduan Pan, Victor Sunstrom, Radicals the Alien, Riser RU, Gummy Bullet, Lucky Beats, Lovebird, Rev Soli, Sir-Tito655, Matthias Simonson, Mr. Narc, Gerlando Belavia, I'm disappointed. My name is Coppersan and I'm super cute XOXO. PC Game Live, Yo Mama, Dante Victory, Stanislaus Sumo Vegas, Black Poro and Caveman, oh yeah. Thank you all so much for watching, stay safe and see you next time.